Hey, everybody, welcome back to Irreverent Business Podcast, the podcast where we sometimes are serious about stuff and a lot of times we're not serious about stuff. But today, I am seriously happy to have my friend Blake Short here. He is one of the owners at Top Dog Digital Solutions, or Top Dog Digital, as he would prefer to be called, and also Fly with the Flock. But just as important as those two things is that he's the best-selling author of the new book, Leveling Up, Escaping Your 9 to 5, which is released on paperback today, and I'm freaking excited for him. Blake Short, welcome to the podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be awesome. I'm so excited. This is your West Coast, East Coast battle right here. And I couldn't be more excited. Now, like every Irreverent Business podcast, you got to give me your Irreverent Business hot take. You get one sentence, Mr. Blake. And then Jake has to 100% agree with you or 100% disagree with you. I did not give you a lot of time on this one. I'm very intrigued to hear what comes out of your mouth next. Mr. Blake Short, what is your Irreverent Business hot take?
My hot take is that we were not meant to be entrepreneurs based on everything we went through in the school system.
Oh, dude. I 100% agree with you. Yeah, you set me up for that one. And that's part of why we became friends, is just the entrepreneurial network world. And I couldn't agree with you more, man. I mean, it was such a heavy, like when you're an employee, here's something that's expected of you. What makes you say that?
Well, everything that I went through, and I know school systems are different, so, there might be some different waves of that, right? But the things that we were taught, we were built upon, are in a lot of ways opposite to what we go through in business. I'll give you one set example. Everything that we were taught is that failure is wrong or it's bad. The opposite is when it comes to business, failure is actually not a bad thing. A lot of times it's a good thing. I've learned so much from failures. And to add on to that, I think we were taught to play it so safe and put ourselves in this like little bubble of comfort. And that does not work in business. So those two areas are the prime reasons why I believe what we were taught didn't prepare us for entrepreneurship.
That's very interesting. And we were just having a conversation prior to this about you coming out to Oregon Business Conference potentially. And I'm probably spoiling an announcement there, but the idea of you coming out and talking about entrepreneurship, and one of my passions is helping narrow that gap in the education system about being a really good employee versus being a business owner. We have a lot of connections at major universities here, and I think it'd be really interesting. I want to get into some of your origin story because I know a little bit of it. I've had the privilege of seeing an advanced copy of your book, but you spent 9 years at one company. That's no joke, man. That's a decade of your life. What was the moment you knew you were done?
Yeah, I knew I was done about a year and a half before I left. So a lot of planning went into it. I think the first 6 months of that was kind of figuring out like, what the heck am I going to do? Like, what's next for me? And then the final year of that was all planning. I started to figure out the things that I wanted to do, and I started to scheme out, okay, here's when I'm going to leave, here's why I'm going to leave, and planned out accordingly, sort of that date and my next move.
You had a 4-day work week.
Yeah. Yeah. With Fridays off, by the way.
I've worked 410s before. I used to do that summertime in college. Most people would kill for the schedule that you had. 4-day work week, less than 40 hours a week. And yet you said it was a job most people would never leave. Despite all of those things, I still left. I left because I believed I could do more. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So a lot of things went into that. So let's dive into first the sort of the politics behind being in a corporate job. There's a lot that goes into that. All right. So I let me actually rewind a little bit with that. So
Okay.
in my early 20s, I was a guy that didn't really have a lot of confidence in himself, was always a little nervous, shy, and really didn't understand my value. And I think that's pretty common in our 20s. I don't think I'm alone in that. Towards the end of my journey at that company, what started to happen was I started to really understand my value and have confidence in who I was and what I could provide. I was number one in the country 2 years in a row. I was crushing it. I was hitting every single category you possibly hit there. And this isn't to toot my own horn. This is just to paint the picture for you, right? With me understanding that, I knew what I was being paid was below what I was bringing to the company significantly. So my mind frame was, okay, I should be in a manager role or in a sales role, mainly sales. I wanted to get into sales there. However, within the position I was in, you had to make a jump to one role to get to sales. So I basically had to do two jumps. The next jump was a number one significant pay decrease and also almost double the amount of time each week. So that was a major reason why I said, there's no way that I'm going to number one, accept that. Number two, I just don't have a path in this company to get to sales. So that was a big reason behind it.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people I've talked to who work in a corporate space are like, yeah, in about 5, 6 years, my boss is going to retire. And that's like what they're banking on. And yeah, you're like, nope, I can read the writing on the wall here. This is not what I want to do. Now, you went from that to a business investment that I think is phenomenal. It was a fantasy wrestling league. Talk to me about how that ended and also what did it teach you?
Well, it taught me that you need to be prepared for failure in entrepreneurship. Number one, I still love the idea. I
I
do.
love the
I still
idea
do.
too, man.
I think we could have made it happen. So, long story short, it was going to be a very, very in depth website. We needed a lot of automations to be pulled. Basically, we wanted all the scoring to be automated through leagues. There's a lot of things that still to this day, like if you asked me to build it, I couldn't build it. I'm not the guy building that. And we had kind of vetted some people. We found a lady we felt pretty confident in. We're like, can you do this? Here's what we need. And we had an example for her. And she was like, yeah, I could definitely do that. We're like, are you sure? Because, this is what it entails. And yeah, basically, she ran off with our money after trying to figure it out, hire different people to figure it out. And what happened is was paying other people to try and figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out. And it got to the point where I think she probably spent what we paid her and then just couldn't refund us.
And
So
she
it
just
pretty much
ditched,
ended
yeah.
there. Yeah, she's gone.
I still love the idea. If you want to revisit it, let's talk. I think it's fantastic. But something big changed for you. And what's crazy is this is around the time you and I met. I mean, this is like 6 years ago, man, which is crazy to think of all that's happened in that amount of time. But you launched a travel agency for Ravens fans, and then COVID killed it. What I mean, talk to me about the mindset that happened in that, because what kept you from going back to a job at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was so locked in and committed to, and I didn't burn any bridges there. I could have came back. I did it the right way. I put my 2 weeks in. I was highly successful towards the ends of it, but I was so locked in. I basically told myself I have X amount of money that I'd saved and put to the side. And I said, no matter what, man, I'm going to make something work in being an entrepreneur. Like I was so committed to that. Like I believe so much that I could do it. These were pretty tough hits early on. You get some money taken away from you for the first business. And by the way, the wrestling and the travel, they were both at the same time. I wanted to do both. So I'm like, I've got these two ideas. I believe in them, which is crazy. Like, who does that? Who's like, I'm going to run two businesses? How
You do
cocky.
that.
Yeah,
You
right.
do that, Blake.
So how much I knew, but the wrestling thing falls apart. Now we can't travel with COVID. So I'm still committed, but at this point I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like in the universe, how did this happen in this time frame? And it's like, is this a sign to go back? And I'm like, no, it's not. We're going to keep pushing. And that was just a crazy psychology for me to just like, I do not want to be proven wrong. I want to show that I can build a business and I'm capable.
In your book, you talk about sending audits and free value to clients. And I'm going to assume this is when Top Dog really started going. You sent out video audits, you did tons of value sharing and things like that. And you said you closed no one in that time. And yet you were driving DoorDash, which shows just the grind. And I respect the grind more than you know, man. But within 6 weeks, you went from 1 client to 20. And before that, you said you spent a year without landing one. What was it that finally broke open?
I think it was a combination of experience and just timing. So this is a pretty cool story. I don't even know if I put this in the book. I hope I did. Now that I'm thinking about it, I hope I did. But so the first year was me trying to perfect. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm like, no, I'm going to send a couple emails to people, but I don't believe that I'm an expert yet. So I was trying to be a perfectionist, and I'm like, I was sort of dipping my toes in the water for a while. I went through some coaching programs, and this also is in combination with me just trying to figure what the heck I'm gonna do, right? Like, do I
Right.
even want to run a marketing agency? I'm kind of forced into and boxed into it now because of COVID. And I got to the point where I was like, the marketing agency is really the only option I have right now. So around that point, that's when I'm like, I can't travel this year. The wrestling business I'm already in the hole. I don't even know how to build the website, but I'm starting to gain confidence in marketing. There was a weekend, I'll never forget it. I was door dashing. It was the end of May. It was the last weekend of May. So right around this time, actually. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I'm wasting my time door dashing. I know I need to do this right now, but the amount of I'm moving backwards. I'm like, I could have just stayed at the job. Like, I started a question like, what am I doing here? I don't want to go back to a job, but I'm moving backwards. And I remember that Sunday, I said, I'm closing people next week, no matter what. I don't care what it takes. And it was like this flip. And sure enough, that Monday, I closed the deal. That Tuesday, I think I closed 2 deals. That Wednesday, I closed 2 deals. And it was like that first week, I think I got like 5 of them. And then it went that basically 1 to 20 or so. And it was just a mindset switch, I think, and confidence. It was those things just snowballed into one.
That's awesome, man. Gosh, I think so many entrepreneurs listening, but also people that are interested in entrepreneurship need to understand like so much of what you see online, the success that people have didn't happen overnight. And some
Oh,
of it still isn't happening the way that people are portraying it to. You said
no.
something, and we were talking about this kind of in the green room prior to starting. You said something I think is really ballsy, and I want you to explain it. You write that most new business owners are not actually working as hard as they think. How did you figure that out about yourself?
That first year. That first year, 100%. Because in my eyes, I'm sending a handful of emails, right? I'm sending a handful of audits, and I'm putting all this work in. Why isn't anybody responding to me? Why doesn't anybody care? And how crazy of me, number one, like to assume that I had some level of information that was so important to them with no experience to show, right? No referral, to just assume that I was going to email these people and they were going to move forward for me. So I think it was just a lesson I had to learn over time. And I think other people will too, that what you're doing is nowhere near what you probably need to be doing. At this point, we X most of that at this point, and that's with proof.
Right.
That's with social proof. It wasn't enough. And I got in this funk where I just believed that I was doing so much, but really I was lying to myself because of the fear. I didn't want to cold call businesses, even though I could have, to close deals. I didn't want to send more emails. I didn't want to send more video audits because those things put myself out there, and that was scary. So I lied to myself and I told myself I was doing way more work than I really was.
You talk about how the people that judge you when you're getting started often become your biggest supporters. Can you give me an example? What is that? What
Yeah.
is that? How did that play out in your life?
Yeah. It was a combination of people I went to school with,
Okay.
and even some members of the friend group, realistically, and I'm not saying they're bad friends. I think they tried to protect me. They didn't understand. They're not business owners. So they're like, why would you leave that kind of job? Like, this is crazy, man. Like, what are you thinking? It's like, I started posting stuff on Facebook where it wasn't the usual me, right? It was more so, it was like, I'm talking about business. I'm talking about things that they're not used to me seeing. They're like, what
Yeah.
is this? What are you doing? And now some of them work within our company. Some of them are like, this is crazy. I can't believe the things you've done. And I totally, number one, understand it. And I respect that they wanted to keep me safe. But I needed to believe in myself and push through those thoughts and those jokes to get to where I am today. And, we're both friends of Adam. Adam went through the same thing. I think
Yeah.
Adam actually helped prepare me for that. He had mentioned that was happening with him. You guys were always a little, you guys were ahead of me in the journey.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
Adam's ahead of everyone.
Yeah. Guys,
Guys, a shout out to McChesney over here.
yep. But that
So
helps.
I want to hone in on that because number one, I just want to commend you. I think it's incredibly gracious the way that you talk about your friends. Is that I think it would be really easy for you to be like, no one believes in me, or no one supports me, or no one ever. But I think it's incredible for you to have a little bit of a revisionist history there and be like, no, these guys are actually trying to watch out for me. And we always joke about like I hate LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is just like an automation dumpster fire. And one of the things that cracks me about LinkedIn is everyone's like, I got a new job. And everyone's like, woo, yeah. They're like all supportive. And then you're like, I started a business. And everyone's like, best of luck. Like, no, very few people celebrate that because, I think there is a stigma about entrepreneurship that is some of it is anecdotal, but some of it is statistics. Like most businesses fail in their first 2 years, and 80% of the ones that make it past fail by 5 years. That's a mind-blowing statistic that does give it gives a little bit of credibility to the people that are kind of concerned there, if you will. You talk about freedom being something which is so interesting. Having you had a 4-day work week, man. But you say that people think they're chasing money, but they're actually chasing freedom. How long did it take you to figure that out?
So a lot of that is, comes down to reading. I started to become a learner, and as someone a student, and I wasn't like that in school. I wasn't a huge fan of school. I felt like there was even then I was smart enough to really recognize a system. I feel like, which is kind of crazy. I can't believe I even noticed that at that time, but it just wasn't for me. I felt like there was a system that just wasn't for me, and going into my early 30s, I'm like, if I really want to understand things, I need to start reading. I really need to start learning. And to start paying more attention to things. And a lot of books really led me down that path. The first book I read was 4 Hour Work Week. So there you go. Right. And, I was just like, this sounds great. And now, granted, I know some things now, that I didn't know then, but that vision of, like you said, at that job, I had a great schedule. People would kill for that schedule. I mean, I'd work 30 hours a week. It didn't dictate my pay. I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. But when I talk about freedom, it's not just the amount of hours worked. Even in those 30 hours, I wasn't happy. And it also affected the time that I was off. My Sundays, I'll tell you right now, you know how big of a football fan I am, and we'll get into that
You're a little bit of a football fan. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit, just a little bit. All day while I'm watching football, I'm going, I got work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was dreading, I spent so much time dreading the work week and being in it that I was like, this isn't the life that I want to live. So I think that thought process is more about the freedom than anything else, not just the hours worked.
Okay. You take, and I connect with this, right? I don't tend to follow conventional business advice, but you say something pretty boldly here. I think it's interesting. You kind of take a swing of the standard advice. You have to be a morning person. And you actually write in your book, you said, I have found that I am least effective when I start my day early. How did you come to kind of discover that? And how does that affect the way that you choose your hours or do your work? I mean, you're an East Coast guy. So to your benefit, I don't get to cheat this as much, Blake. Someday
Yeah.
I'm going to move to Amsterdam for like 3 months. I'm going to call every one of my East Coast clients just so they know what it's like
So I
to
am
work on.
very lucky to be on this side. I would struggle mightily on your side.
But how did you figure that out? Like, how did you figure out your own kind of rhythm?
Yeah, I knew this even in the corporate side. I hated mornings, man. Like, and that was a physical job, so I was able to wake up. Like, you're moving around a lot and
Right.
stuff. There's some downtime with driving here and there, but once you're pretty active. In this role, though, I'm sitting at the desk. And I'm terrible with mornings. I always have been. And I know that's a mindset. And we can go into that. Trust me, I did the Miracle Morning book. I did a lot of things trying to change this. But ultimately, what I found is it aligned actually really well with my schedule. So we have a lot of West Coast clients, a lot, majority of them. We have some East Coast. Or my schedule, I usually start around 10:30 or 11, and I wrap up at about 7, typically. Sometimes 6. Sometimes I have a great team. Sometimes I don't have to work at all, really. I'm just there.
Yeah.
Thank you for that if you guys are watching. But if I tried, man, in the beginning, I was like, yeah, you got to start those days at 5 a.m. And shout out to Adam once again. He's like taking his, selfies at 4 a.m. And I'm like, oh, I got to be like that. Terrible. Awful. Not for me. I was awful. I'd be at the desk, dude. And I'm like,
Why am I here?
and I'm like, whatever hours that I cheated and got in that morning, they were miserable hours that I got nothing done. So I just was like, I need to be who I am and understand that I'm at my best in this time frame, and this is what I'm going to do. And also with that, there's times, dude, I'll hop in and do campaigns at 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, I'm at my best. So I'm able to kind of flip that a little bit on very late night hours as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm also not a morning person. And I have staff like literally, all over the country. And so one of the benefits is, they often catch stuff before I'm even awake, right? I got a staff member in Madrid right now. That's a huge hack. But no, I feel you, man. And I think that for a lot of people, you start doing research on the 9 to 5 and productivity and things like that. And you find out that it's like about 4 hours a day that people are like insanely productive. And it's like that power time that they have to where they just knock out a bunch of stuff. I'd be interested to hear more about that, but I want to get into some of it. You are incredibly vulnerable in the book about the honest stuff, and you said something that I really resonate. You write that much of the business money is not your personal money. What do first time founders not understand about that gap?
It's just you think you're like, look at these businesses and he's making $20,000 a month. Oh my goodness, I would be rich. And yeah, no, I'm gonna tell you right now, not the case. If you want a team and you don't want to do it all yourself, things are gonna significantly change. Especially if you want to pay that team well, that's a thought process for me. I love to pay my team well, and that goes back to my experience in corporate, right? I didn't feel like I was paid enough. The last thing I want to do is bring somebody on who feels the same way I did, doesn't feel valued, feels stuck. My first goal and I wrote this in the book, I was like, if I could hit $10,000 a month, I would be made. I'm rich. And I'm thinking as the business, I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, it couldn't have been more wrong. And it's funny too, because I don't know if you went through this, but like when I hit that was like the highlight. Like I've never felt such a sense of accomplishment since I hit that mark. So it's kind of wild. But then when I started building a team, I'm like, if we did $10,000 a month of this business now, we are done.
We're all starving.
Yeah, like it is going to be so bad. But that mark was so exciting to me, man. It really was. And we've hit pretty significant marks since then. I've just never felt that same, and I don't know why that is. I can't explain that. Maybe I'll figure that out.
I've never talked to anyone about this before. I remember it too. I remember it for myself. I remember not the first $10,000 month. I remember the first time I hit $10,000 period in gross sales when I first started the company. I still have the screenshot, I think, from like my payment processor, because that was a significant day for me. So that's really cool to hear you say that I had a similar feeling to that. What is that? I mean, when you hit that first big monetary goal, you talk about in the book, it feels like winning the Super Bowl, which as a Seattle Seahawks fan, I have more recent memories of that than you do. As a Ravens fan, you're welcome. You knew that was coming, Blake. You knew that was coming.
We miss you, Mike McDonald. We really do.
But you have something else you talk about, which I think is incredibly, again, it's very vulnerable, very authentic of you. You pay 4 of your team members more than you made at your old job. Is there a tension between paying yourself well and paying the people on your team well?
Yeah, attention, no. The way I look at it is, and I just mentioned this, I really believe in putting the team first. My motivation in this. If I have the team paid well, I 100% in my heart believe that the company is going to thrive. And I think my understanding of that and also the motivation that comes into that, like knowing, all right, hey, I'm aiming to pay this team member this, I'm aiming to pay this team member that, I think drives us to success as well. So those two things actually help the business more than they hurt them, in my opinion. Could I pay less for things? Yeah, absolutely. But I think putting myself in that position, one, I love to be in that position because it kind of shows the whole purpose of everything that I came from anyway, and in the fact that I didn't feel appreciated. I don't want people to feel that way. Our turnover is fantastic, and I'm sure that's probably, is a part of it. And I do think it motivates me to a level where we keep thriving and keep pushing the business to levels that maybe we wouldn't without me having that
Hmm.
internal pressure.
Man, I think that's really telling the type of business owner you are, that giving that kind of care. You even talk about how like you guys treat your VAs, which for those that are listening to this that aren't in the digital marketing space, not uncommon, right? To have virtual assistants that help a number of things, but you treat them. You say you treat them like they're local employees. How often do you see other agency owners doing the opposite of that? And like what does that look like? How do you build that kind of rapport with overseas staff that you can just treat them as team members and not virtual assistants?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think everything we've built in the beginning was me. Now it's Chase who does a really good job of that. He meets every single week and goes over. We did a company survey and we're trying to continue to get better with this. So that's one thing I wanted to add to it. But when it comes to paying team members that are termed VAs, I felt like really early on in the agency space, it was kind of pretty ugly, in my opinion. It was like you can hire these people for $2 an hour and they'll be fine. It's like, look, it's like I understand that their economy is different than ours, right? But these are really talented people who bring a lot of value to your company, and you should approach it in that way. And I'm not saying that you got to go and start hiring them at $25 an hour here. But what I wanted to build and what we have here is we say, I believe in how valuable you are. And I stole some stuff from Centos and said, I'm going to build ways for you to make good amount of money on commissions.
Nice.
And I think we have a good system for you to do this. So we have our top performing one. He's been with me for almost 6 years. There's
Wow.
times where he makes just as much as our people here in the States because he
Amazing.
crushes and he's talented and it shows in what he's being paid. And it goes back to my logic of I don't want somebody to feel underpaid on the value they bring. He's bringing incredible value and he's paid upon that.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. You wrote that 5 years from now, where you are today will seem small. What does the next 5 years look like for you, Blake?
I don't know exactly what that will look like, but the reason I wrote that is being able to really see the trajectory that not only the business is in, but also myself personally. I think I'm at a level now where I'm really understanding who I am and what value I provide, and that there's a lot of unlimited options available to me. And
Hmm.
that statement's more of a confidence in myself and our team and what I've built. I just feel like I've been a very solid student in the game. I'm very in the trenches still, even though I don't have to be. And those things give me an advantage over the next couple of years. And you and I know there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of shifts. We got AI. We could dive into that. But I have been able to be so deep in the structure of these businesses that I believe even if marketing disappeared in 3 years, then I'm just going to build a home service business or I'm going to build
Yeah.
coaching or consulting. There's an area that I'm going to continue to be successful in. I just motivated, man. I won't stop.
Are you unemployable at this point?
Yes. No, I you could stick this quote right now because it'll stay. I will be homeless before I go get a job. So 100%.
If that's the case, we got sidewalk for you out here in Oregon, buddy.
Yeah. Just just give me a little bit of space out there,
Dude, I
man.
got you. I got you, man.
Percent. It's when you have seen what we've seen at this point,
Yeah.
how are you able to go back? I would think the only way, Jake, and you might agree with me, I think the only way would be sales in a very high
It's
sales role.
That's really funny you say that because my wife and I we were driving to Portland the other day and we had this conversation. And I was like, I have a feeling I could make a lot of money doing sales for somebody else.
Mm.
And she was like, yeah, probably true. She's like, you think you enjoy it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't like asking permission to take time off of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine going back to like, "Hey, man, do you mind if I, go take that trip next week?"
Yeah, that is hard.
Like,
Okay, so let me kind of shift gears because someone who listens to this interview, they hate their job, but they have a family.
yeah.
They have a mortgage. They got one weekend to start. Because that's really what this comes down to. I think a lot of people are like, man, I put together this business plan for 2 years or whatever. It really comes down to just deciding to go for it. And they got one weekend to start. What do they actually do? What advice do you give them as an entrepreneur? I mean, you wrote the book on it, man. This is escaping your 9 to 5.
Yeah,
What are they
and I
supposed to
detail
do?
that. Yeah, I detail that in there. You know, you have to, number 1, understand what your skill sets are. Yeah, I can't just tell you what business to create. I don't know your skill sets. So you need to understand your skill sets. And then I go into detail of some examples and things that I paired my skill sets in and why I went those routes. But there are so many unlimited opportunities in entrepreneurship. Like, I promise you, there's so many things, and it's getting better. You know, now you have you
Hmm,
create AI things. There's
right.
so many, and it continues to evolve. But you need to understand your skill sets and you need to understand your weaknesses. That's number 1. And actually, the comment on what you said, and you may disagree with me on this, I think you have more time than you think. So if you do have those things and you're working a 9 to 5, and I did a bad job at this. So this is me, kind of going back to what I would change. You get so tired with work. You're working a 40-hour work week. You're working 45 hours or whatever. You have more time than you think.
Hmm.
If you are that disappointed in your life and in your role, and even with kids and stuff, there are an hour or hours to that day that you can commit to bettering yourself, no
Hmm.
matter what your schedule is. And if you really want this, and I mean really want this, you need to take advantage of those hours. That weekend, those after hours after work, that quiet time when you put the kids to bed, all those things, if you got time to go get drinks Friday night with your friends,
You got time to start a business.
you got time to start studying on what you need to do to build
Yeah.
a business.
No,
And you may
I
not want to
can
hear that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, I don't wanna downplay how much time it takes. I recant that statement. But
Yeah.
there is a point of just there is a moment where you're like, "I'm gonna do this." I still remember for me, I remember the day I went and filed the LLC. Like, that was a pivotal day for me. What's funny about that, I don't know if even you know this story. That was on the 9-year anniversary of when I started at the job that I left. So you and I actually had a very
Okay.
similar
Interesting.
trajectory, I think, of
Okay.
9 years of doing the same thing, then being in your early 30s and going, I want to do something different, I think. But I'll attest to that, man. I mean, I'm not a morning person. I hate mornings. I drink an insane amount of coffee. I have coffee plants tattooed all the way up my shoulder. Tis my lifeblood. But I remember being up at 4 a.m. before the kids were awake and before going to work at my old job and studying and watching courses and trying things out and different things like that. You said something earlier I think was interesting where you're like, it just wasn't not gonna work. Like you get to a point to where you're like, this is going to happen. And it's gonna happen when it happens, but I'm just gonna put my feet down and no one's getting past me here. Like I'm gonna defend the paint. Making a shift back, because I think fly with the flock. This is one of the first things to me when I heard about this, what you were doing. I remember talking to you about this, dude, like 6 years ago. I was like, you're doing what? For those that have no idea what this is, what is Fly with the Flock?
Yeah, pretty cool. So, Fly with the Flock was built on something that I was already doing. I was traveling for road games for the NFL. So, if you're a football fan, clearly Jake loves the Seahawks. I love the Ravens, right? and I've been to Seattle, and actually going back next year. But anyway,
Nice.
so this business was built upon something I was already doing, which was traveling to road games. So my thought was, why don't I've already been doing this for me and for friends for a decade at this point. Why don't we do this for other Ravens fans? So what we do is we select anywhere from 3 to 5 games each year, and these are road games, and we set up the airfare, hotel, we do the tailgate, we have parties here in Baltimore, we have parties there on the city we're going to, game tickets with the group, pretty much everything handled. All you got to do is show up and bring your jersey. That's what I say. So, it's a really cool thing to do, man. I get to go out there and have a ball and do what I was already doing as a kid since I was 19,
Yeah.
but do it with a group of Ravens fans. And we have a lot of regulars that do it every year that I literally see once a year. And it's like, hey, how have you been? What's going on? And we build a relationship with these people. It's a lot of fun.
If you had to kind of delineate between these two options here, is Fly with a Flock, is it a profitable business or is it a passion business?
Passion. Yeah. Yeah. It's profitable, but not in the way that Top Dog is. And if I didn't love it, I wouldn't continue to do it. It's time consuming. It's very risky. It's a risky business model. I found that
Sure.
out different ways. But what it affords me to do is the ability to do the travel, not pay for it, have a
Right.
little profit, and have those experiences, which I think when I look back on my life, I'm not going to look back at how much money we made at Top Dog, how much money was in my account. I'm going to look back at that time that we had a group of us in Seattle and we beat the Seahawks.
You had to bring it. You had to bring
Which by the way did happen when I was there, but we'll see this next year. But it's those experiences, right? Like those are going to be the things when we're in our final days and our final minutes. We're not going
Yeah.
to care about the account. Jake, you might a little bit more because you've got a family and you're providing and you're trying to pass off to the kids. But I don't have any kids, man. It's me. It's gonna probably end with me. We got dogs, but it's gonna end with me. So when I get to that final step, I'm gonna go, man, what
Yeah.
did you do with your life? Did you have a
Yeah.
purpose? Did you have enjoyment?
I love that. I love that, man. Now, I want to talk about the cover of your book because it is very clearly got a gamer orientation to it. And you are a huge gamer. Make a case that gaming actually taught you something about business.
Yeah, I could. I think I've had games since I was literally 4 years old, played Nintendo and was playing Super Mario, or actually, I was original Mario. But anyway, it's funny. The gaming concept really came from when this is going to sound weird. I'm trying to put this in words, but I'm sure you played Sims before, right?
Sure.
Or games revolved around that. So when I really thought deeply about this, I said, what would my life look like if I was playing a video game and I have control of my life? Would it be what I'm doing right now and going to this 9 to 5 that I hate, or would it be entirely different? And I'm like, dude, you need to take a step back and realize you do control your life. This is some sort of a game, right? That we're playing, and you have options that you have been kind of maybe taught or trained that aren't there that really are there. So that was the concept and the thinking behind that. And I think what games have taught me is sort of that thinking process, right? Like
Hmm.
you are navigating something that's similar to a game. At the end of the day, we take a lot of things so seriously that, let's be honest, we completely forget about or just evaporate over time. And we lose sight of what maybe is more important from time to time. And I think I take a lot of those, I try and remind myself of those concepts that, hey, man, you have more control than you think, number one. And number two, some things just aren't as serious as you think they are in that time.
That's irreverent business, man. Yeah, 100%. Talk to me about the book writing process. What was the hardest part for you?
I think putting everything into words and not missing things. Even what we talked about now, I do wish I'd have thrown some more gaming things in there, but I'd be in such a flow, and then I'd come out of that flow and be like, "Oh, I wish I would have added this or that." And I would add some things, but like trying to really piece it together and construct it, it was a really unique experience. I'll be honest, when I first started, I was like, "Oh, I got this." Again, just blind confidence. And then in the beginning sessions, I was like just sitting there. And I'm like, "What? Like, why is it not coming out? And finally I got a flow and it started to, but it took a little bit. And that's something I really learned about the process. It's not quite as easy to get everything from here to the page.
I resemble that remark. I remember sitting in my hotel and I had to go to Eastern Germany to write my book because I needed to get out of all time zones that I had clients. I remember sitting there staring at my laptop at that stupid flashing cursor thing and being like, all right, let's go. And it was a lot. So no, I hear you that, man. You write in the final chapter of the book that you really hope that this fires people up, that it really gets them excited, inspired, and energized. What do you hope that someone who listens to this interview, what do you hope that within 48 hours of finishing this interview, that they have done or at least written down or kind of made movement towards?
Yeah, I'd start off by saying, I hope they know they're capable of much more if they're not happy with their life.
Hmm.
And they have the power to change it, whether they believe it or not. It's going to be up to you to make that change. So the first step is going to be eliminate the excuses you've already created in your head, which you're probably telling yourself right now.
Yeah, dude. Yikes. That'll
Yeah.
preach.
And and this is coming from experience. And Jake, you
Yeah.
did it too, right? What, oh, but
Yeah.
I got kids. I've got this, I got that. And it's true. Those things are true. I'm not saying they're not, but you're already I feel like we're like trained like to immediately give the reasons why it won't work instead of the reasons it will. And if you want to start off, I'll give you another step. And I talked about this in the book, and I took this from another book. You, if you really want to believe in this, list out because you're gonna be scared. You're gonna be like, oh, but these things, the excuses. List out what could really happen in a negative way, and list out what can happen in a positive way. And I'd be shocked if you don't have more positives than negatives
Hmm.
in how your life changes. Talk about, okay, if I left my job, what happens, right? What am I afraid of? We're gonna lose our house. I had a mortgage at the time too. I totally understand that, right? How are we gonna pay our bills? Okay, well then, while you're building the business, what are some ideas you could pay the bills? Can you save enough money over time, which is something I did. I stacked up for a year to put towards this project, right?
Hmm.
What could you do to prepare yourself for those things that are scaring you, to make them not as scary, to take the leap? That's probably step number one.
I think it's one of the questions that we don't ask ourselves enough as entrepreneurs is oftentimes we ask what happens if it doesn't work out. But I think sometimes the scarier question is what happens if it does? And that actually, I think, can be intimidating for people. Oftentimes I look at my wife and I go, I'm going to complain about having to go to the job that I dreamed about having. Like I say it a bit ironically, like, oh,
Yep.
darn, I gotta go, gotta go to the office to go do the job that I worked really hard to create.
Wait.
Some of the irony behind it. Okay, I want to wrap it up with this one, man, because you started talking about education. You talk about the school system or the education system just not serving entrepreneurs. What would you say to that 15, 16, 17-year-old Blake Short?
Number one, know your value and be more confident in yourself. Understand who you are and what you can provide. Take time to learn, to understand things, and look at everything, not just what you were taught, but things that aren't in your surroundings. I wasn't
Hmm.
surrounded by entrepreneurs. I grew up in a community that doesn't have very many of them, and that's an excuse I learned, just because my environment didn't dictate me being an entrepreneur doesn't mean I can't become one because I did. I just had to go outside that box and learn. And that's where reading was a big part of me. Huge, when I really started to understand people who were outside of that bubble, outside of that box, I really started to be like, man, that you could do that, and it combined it like it was so crazy, Jake. It was like everything hit, right? It was like the confidence, the skill sets, they were like here, but like the understanding wasn't there yet. And then
Yeah.
finally the
Yeah.
understanding like connected with it. And it was like, huh, and so and people at that age, another thing that I'm really studying, I'm reading a book right now, is you have so much time. And that's the Gary V thought
Yeah.
process. You have so much time. Me and you have so much time still. You have so much time to fail, especially at that age. You don't have the mortgage. Man, go and have a ball. Like go do a side gig
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do some ideas. Like you have so much at your fingertips. Now is the time to dive into this. I love when I talk to 16, 18, 19-year-old entrepreneurs. I'm like, dude, you're so far ahead of me. So
Yeah.
far ahead of me. You're going to be great because they've got the time to do these things. So it would be those conversations and those lessons I've learned.
Blake, I couldn't thank you enough, man, for taking time to and it's evening where you are. That's the East Coast West Coast thing here. But dude, I can't thank you enough for sharing and for putting in the work, man. I mean, I've had the pleasure of knowing you now for half a decade and just watching you grind and now getting to the points where you're publishing a book about it to encourage other people. I think it's such a gift to the entrepreneurial community, man. So I appreciate you doing that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, dude. Thank you, man. Thank you for being a motivating force. I talked to you in the beginning of this and you could have said, hey, man, get out of here, shoo. And you didn't, you know,
Nonsense.
you're doing great things, dude. Like you're a role model in that sense. Look at the things that you're doing, the publishing company. So thank you as well for giving me the opportunity and for being a good motivation force as I continue to grow and step into different shoes in my life.
Dude, love it, man. Mutual respect for sure. So appreciate it,
Absolutely.
dude. Excited for the paperback to be live. Super excited for you and all the success that it brings, man. So thanks again.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.